Welcome, Katie. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Likewise, I've been looking forward to this conversation because we are going to talk about such an important component, such an important thing that can help us take our coaching business to the next level. So we are going to talk about how to blog like a boss and how we can use blogging to take our coaching business to the next level. But before we do that, I'm very keen to understand a little bit about you. So tell us, Katie, what is your story?
Well, my story meanders a little bit. So before I set my business up, I was working in publishing. I had worked for a healthcare publisher for around four and a half years. And I had started my career there as an intern. I always wanted to work with text and be editing and helping people to spread the word about what they needed to say. And as someone who had always studied literature, I kind of assumed I wouldn't get the job because it was a healthcare publisher. And I said to them, look, I've got a GCSE in biology and that's it. I don't know if that's good enough, but they were very keen to have a really big mixture of people on the editorial team. So I got the job, and 4 years later, I was managing the editorial team. I was talking with senior management and also managing new graduates who were joining us and showing them how to create content and how to share it in a way that would keep readers on the page. That was our key performance indicator at the time. We wanted to make sure that the people coming to our website were staying on it because our content was brilliant. So I loved it. I loved the fact that I was working with text, I was editing these papers and working with researchers and writers to help them get their message out. But the thing that was not quite so much fun was managing people. So obviously, as you progress in your corporate career, generally speaking, you'll move from doing the thing you love into managing people. And some people love it. And to begin with, I did. But after a while, I realized actually, even though it's really fun to learn new things, I much prefer working with people on their content. And I didn't really have anywhere else to go in that company. And I had a friend who was a graphic designer who freelanced and ran her own business. And I would meet her for lunch and she would say, oh, I've just been doing yoga this morning and I'll do a bit of work later. And it just sounded like the dream life. And for a long time, I put it off because I was a bit worried about making enough money. But eventually I thought, you know what, I've always wanted to do it. I'm at the perfect time in my life to really give it a try. I'm going to set up my own business and I'm going to help people with their content. So that's what I did. And initially I was proofreading for people because that was one of the main skills I was using in my editing job. But eventually, after having lots of different conversations with people, I found that what they really wanted was to have someone they could trust to write their content for them. These were coaches and consultants and people who relied on their content to talk to their audience and generate leads, but we're also finding that as their client roster filled, they had less and less time to write that content. But there was this real fear of outsourcing it because they felt, how could someone else possibly write this for me? It's my business and it's my opinion. So what I did was I started working with a few people so that they could stay in complete control of what I put in their content. They sent me voice notes of all of the key messaging, all of their blog outlines, and I used that to write their blog for them. And the results were just amazing. Everyone was so pleased to see that they could outsource without relinquishing control completely. And so that's what I do now. That's the story of how I came to do what I do and why I do it as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. In just 4 years and a bit more, you were managing the entire editorial team. That's massive.
Yes, I couldn't believe it myself. It was so quick, but I think it was kind of in keeping with the way the company was growing. So when I first joined, they were quite small. I think there was only maybe 25 or 30 of us. And by the time I left, there was approaching 100 people. So it was growing really quickly. And the people who joined in that early stage when I did were sort of taken with it. And it was a bit of a roller coaster. But yeah, learned a lot, absolutely loved it. And it definitely gave me the experience and the sort of knowledge that I needed to be able to kind of believe in myself enough to come and do a business by myself. So yeah, fantastic experience.
I hear you. I have a short stint in publishing as well. So I used to work with Cambridge University Press.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so I kind of understand the publishing world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a brilliant experience working with them.
A lot of fun, isn't it?
Yeah, that was in my previous life before I became a coach. Yeah, what a fantastic story. Taking the time and pursuing the courage, dipping into your courage to pursue your passion. Beautiful.
Yes.
That is something that all of us can learn from you.
Thank you.
So tell us a bit more about blogging. What is blogging, for starters, and how can we use blogging to build our coaching business?
Sure. So a blog is really like an article that you can write, and it can be on anything. It could be your point of view about something. It could be something, a piece of work that you've done with a client and you want to present a case study. It could even be simply setting out what you do and how you do it. I've got a blog like that on my own website, and it's one of my most popular ones. Essentially, it's a way of conveying a message to your audience without the character limit that you might have on social media, and without all of that noise that you get on social media as well. So when you're posting on social media, of course, the benefits are that you access this huge audience very quickly, and you can be very agile with it because you can respond to your comments straight away, and you notice every single day what's popular and what people are responding to. But after a little while, that becomes a little bit tiring to obviously do every day. So what blogging does is it allows you to take those messages that you know are resonating. It allows you to put it into your own words without any limits on what you're allowed to say in the post or how long it needs to be. And you can put that on your website so it stays there forever. So you're not having to log back in every day because your blog post has dropped down the social media feed. It's always there. So you can have this whole library almost on your website of your point of view, your messaging, your case studies and testimonials, anything you want to say to your audience to help them understand what you do and how you help and whether you're the right person for them. And it stays where you put it without all of those other voices around it. So a reader is, I kind of liken it to having a conversation with your reader, but in written form. So if you think about social media is a bit like trying to have a conversation with someone in a really noisy nightclub. There's loads of blaring music and other people chatting, and you've kind of got to just shout in their ear very quickly and to the point so they hear you. But with blogging, it's more like being in a coffee shop. You're sitting there, you've got their full attention because they're not looking at everything else going on around you. And you can say as much as you need to get that point across. So it's a quieter and more direct way of talking to your audience without that noise of social media or even email marketing as well. Other emails in their inbox that they might be keen to have a look at. It's very personal in the way that it conveys that message to your reader.
I love that analogy and the distinction that you have made. Yeah, so much noise on social media versus having a deep conversation and not just having to do a quick shout. Yeah, that's such a powerful way to explain what blogging is. Yes. So Katie, tell us, is there an ideal length that we should look at when we do blogs?
Yeah, this is actually a really common question that I get, and it's one that I really love talking about because I just think it's very interesting, all the different takes. So if you Google how long should my blog be, you'll probably find loads of articles telling you how long it should be, how many words you should put in it. And you'll probably find that the top ones are telling you to write a blog of about 2,500 words in order to get the best from your blog. Now, for me, that's a bit too long. Now, I want to caveat this by saying my opinion is that word count is much less important than the words that you choose to use. In my opinion, the ideal word length of your blog is just as long as you've said what you need to say you've been concise and clear so that your reader can understand it. You've not missed anything, because obviously you don't want to be cutting down words to stick to a word count and missing important points. And you also want to make sure your reader knows what to do next. So that call to action, in the same way you'd have on a social post or an email. As long as you've got a clear, concise message that says what you need to say and makes it clear to the reader what they need to do, your blog is the perfect length. Whether that's 500 words or 3,000 words, it can be anywhere in between. The blogs I write for my clients and the blogs I write for my own website tend to end up at around 1,000 words, but I have some clients who prefer to stick to really short, snappy blogs, maybe 600 or 700 words. And I also have clients who like to do a really deep dive, and each of their blogs might come out around 2,000 words. So there's, in my opinion, no right or wrong. A content marketing agency might tell you differently, but remember that all of that advice is based on research that's done by content marketing agencies. So it's taking an average of all these different word lengths and seeing, which ones get engagement, which ones convert to the most leads, which ones show up on Google highest. And all of that research, while it's valuable to start giving us insights, it's not based on your specific business. So imagine if your clients are people who are very busy, maybe they're mums who have, new mums who are very, very busy. They've not got time to read 2,000 words in a blog. So instead, 500 words will be much more effective. But if your audience is someone who doesn't read very often, but they like to go really deep and get all the details, a longer blog might suit them better. So really, it's a personal choice and almost a gut feeling of what works best for your audience.
And that's such a brilliant business point that you have brought up. Whatever we are delivering, whatever piece of content it is, it has to be right for our audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a young mom wouldn't really have the time and space to read 2,000 or 3,000 words at a stretch.
Definitely.
So yes, I see what you mean. Yeah, that's something amazing to remember. I find that my blogs fall between 1,000 to 1,500 words.
Yes. Yeah.
After that, they start feeling too long.
Yeah, you can sometimes start waffling, can't you? I mean, you want to obviously say everything you need to say, but you want to make sure that everything's concise and that you're not kind of using words for the sake of it. But yeah, I'm similar to you. If I'm going much above 1,500 words, I'm probably overdoing it a bit. Depending on what I'm talking about.
Yeah. My challenge is not so much waffling. My personal challenge is, if I were to write my blog any longer, then I start feeling as if I'm doing a deep dive and it is becoming a coaching session. Then 2,000 words won't be sufficient.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
So we've got to have that boundary.
Absolutely. Yeah. Your free content versus, your ring-fenced topics for your clients. Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's one that I think a lot of people find quite difficult, particularly when they start writing blogs, or even if you've been doing it for a while. Where do I draw the line of what I put in my free content versus what I keep back and honor my clients by only giving them those topics? So it's a fine line to walk, and one that I think you'll find by just pushing your boundaries a little bit and finding out how comfortable do I feel with that, or actually no, that's not quite right for a blog. I think I'm going to hold that back. So yeah,
and we also have to be careful that we don't give out so much information that we end up confusing our audience. That's the bit I really like to be careful about, not so much worried about the paid and the free content, because people will come to us anyway. There are enough number of people in the world, but if we give too much information, then there is a possibility that it'll be just too much for somebody who's checking out a blog.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and it can be hard when you're excited to help as much as possible. But
yes,
absolutely, you want to keep it very clear and digestible for your readers.
Yes. All right. So blogging is a brilliant idea. 1,000 to 1,500 words. That's how I would do it. Learning from you, and it has to be right for our audience. If it is not right for our audience, something has to change.
Yeah.
What else can we take care of when we blog?
Blogging, another thing that's really great about blogging is the fact that you can use it to answer all of the questions your audience needs to know to decide whether or not to invest in your service. So something that I encourage everyone to do in their blogs is to think about the sorts of conversations you're having regularly with your audience. Someone that I spoke to once, who's actually my accountant now, she uses her blog almost as a sort of business card. So when people come to her, you can imagine as an accountant, she gets a few questions almost every day from people trying to understand things about their taxes and things like that. So every time someone asks her a question, she writes a blog to answer that question. And then she knows that the next time someone asks it, she can direct them to the blog to, first of all, give them all the information they could possibly need, and also save her the time of writing out those emails every day, like, oh, this is what you need to do, or this is what you need to know. And this does two things. The first thing is it adds huge value for your audience. So they know that they can go to your blog and it will always be worthwhile reading it. But it also creates a huge amount of credibility for you. You are guiding your reader from being a stranger to being a lead or even a client simply by answering all of their questions in your blogs. So that includes things like objection handling. It includes things like potentially pricing. That's a personal choice whether you include details of your pricing and your content, of course, but it could be something that if you feel comfortable doing that, it can really help your audience understand exactly where your business is positioned and whether it's right for them. So using blogging to almost build that buyer's journey, and then someone stumbles across your website and simply by reading each of your blogs, they've gone from a stranger to a client, and you've not had to lift a finger or send a single message until they reach out and say, let's do it, I'm ready to work with you.
Yeah, I love that. From a stranger to a client, to a lead and to a client.
Yeah.
That's amazing without having to do anything. Well,
yes,
other than writing a blog.
Of course, yeah, a one-time investment, and then hopefully it works over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah. And it also helps us decide who's not the right fit for us.
Yes.
And our potential clients are able to make that same decision even without having that conversation with us.
Yes, definitely. One of the blogs that I've written a few months ago was helping my reader to understand, is it the right time for them to outsource their blogging? So I've put in this blog a few questions like, ask yourself these, and if the answer is yes, then outsourcing might be a great option for you. And if the answer is no, here's something else that might be more helpful for you at this point. So that's, like you said, it helps your reader to understand not only whether you are the right person for them, but whether they are in the right position to work with you. So it's a fantastic resource for that.
Wonderful. Yeah, we are preempting objections and giving them the information. It's almost like mind reading, isn't it?
Almost, yeah. Especially when you're using your conversations with your audience to inform what you write about. I always say this, every single conversation you have, every objection you get, of course it's sometimes disappointing if someone objects to your service and decides not to buy, but actually it's such an opportunity to create even more content that will help others to decide that you are the right person for them. So it's a huge opportunity and a way to almost repurpose those conversations you're having into something that's going to just generate more clients for you.
Oh, I love that. Repurpose those conversations into blogs.
Yes.
And generate more clients. Oh, I love that. Thank you. Amazing. So let's talk a little bit about the focus on blogging. So if there's a coach, let's say they are a health coach, should they write only about health and fitness?
Not necessarily. I love the fact that blogs can not only talk about your service, but help someone get to know you as a person. And of course, as a coach, you're working one-to-one with someone, normally for quite an extended period of time. And that means that the person who's working with you needs to know that they get on with you, they're going to look forward to talking to you, and that they're going to be on the same wavelength as you as well. So if you were a health coach, for example, but you were the sort of health coach who encouraged, your clients to still have the odd treat here and there, you're not someone who's going to restrict all of their food. having blogs that talk about that is so helpful, because it means that, you know, if someone was looking for a health coach, that they were more interested in sort of exercise and understanding the physical side of health, they would know, okay, that person focuses more on diet, and that's not really what I'm looking for. Or, okay, this is a health coach, but she also loves chocolate. Like, I can still talk to her about eating chocolate and being healthy at the same time. This is exactly what I'm looking for. So even if you're a health coach, that doesn't mean you have to focus solely on talking about health. You could talk about a holiday that you've gone on with your family. I think it's still helpful to relate it to what you do, and use maybe as an anecdote or a lesson about what you do. But by all means, there's no need to focus solely on your service and your messaging. It can be personal. Something else that might be helpful is to talk about your family, if you feel comfortable doing that in your content, because that helps people relate to you. If you work with, you know, going back to the example of the new mums, if you yourself are a mum, that could help them to relate to you and know, okay, she's going to get all of these challenges I'm coming to her with. So by all means, talk about, you know, personal things or unrelated things that perhaps build that idea of who you are as a person and as a coach, so that your clients not only understand right for them in a professional sense, but they also know, I'm going to really get on with this person. You also want them to enjoy reading your content. You know, you want it to be fun and enjoyable and exciting to read. So that's another reason to branch out and talk about the things you're passionate about, because that will shine through in the writing, and then people will really, really grow to love you, so that they reach out.
Yes, yes, so true, because they are not just hiring a coach, they are hiring a coaching service from somebody that they relate to.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And the diversity of content can help us establish that connection with our audience.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, one of the things that I do when I write my content is I make sure that whatever content I'm putting out, I use a story, because I'm a story coach.
Yes.
And I talk about story in the sense of coaching. I talk about story in sense of public speaking, all kinds of stories. A lot of times I just do personal stories. But then for me, I feel it's really simple, because I'm a story coach. No matter what I talk about, I have the opportunity to demonstrate my skill.
Yeah.
So yeah, coming back to, it has to feel right for our audience. It has to be right for us.
Yes,
and
definitely.
That's where the magic happens.
It absolutely is. Yeah, for sure.
So what are some of the things you would tell us not to do when we want to do blogs?
Okay. The first one might be a bit strange. It might sound a bit strange, but stick with me. The first thing I would recommend is to not worry about SEO, at least at the beginning. And the reason
Thank you for saying that.
The reason I say that is because SEO is very, very complex. You know, of course, as you may know, there are all sorts of different SEO consultants who are experts in that. So you can pay so much for really, really specialist SEO advice, which just goes to show how big of a subject it is. In my opinion, SEO comes secondary to the quality of your content. So especially if you are brand new to writing blogs, I don't think that you should give SEO even a thought until you've found your voice and until you feel confident that the blogs you're writing are resonating with your audience. Because you can invest and have the best SEO in the whole world. If your blog isn't very good, or if your audience doesn't want to read your blog, that SEO is just going to go to waste, because no one's going to click on it and therefore read it. So the first thing that you should do is just practice writing, practice and share your blog with your existing audience to find out, is this really hitting the mark? Are they engaging with it? Are you getting those comments like, oh my goodness, you're in my head, or I really needed to read this today, I loved it. You know, once you're starting to get that kind of feedback on your blogs, then start looking at SEO and start looking into it, you know, build it up slowly. Don't worry too much about going all in straight away. If you decide in the future that you want to use your blogs and your website as your your primary method of generating leads, then SEO does need to be a big focus, and it's worth investing in someone who can help you with that. However, to begin with, don't even think about it. That's my advice anyway.
I had taken this advice a few years ago, when I was just starting out, and I was going through all that shiny object syndrome. I've got to have a website. All right, I have a website now, but
yeah,
I've put some content as well, but I've got to drive traffic to it. Okay, SEO is going to help me. So I reached out to somebody, and I knew them in personal life because we used to do public speaking together.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And this person told me not to do it. Although I was a potential client, and SEO was one of the services they used to offer as a marketing agency. And they said, that's the wrong way to go about it. And he said, first put the content out and let your audience know you through your content, because SEO is a rather temporary thing. It can drive traffic, it can give you a boost, but it's not a long-term strategy. Mm-hmm. I said, so are you saying I don't need to do it? And they said, no, you don't.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those things that can be like you say, it's shiny object syndrome. So it's, a lot of people talk about it, and they, particularly if it's a service they offer, their messaging will naturally explain the benefits of it and how important it is, particularly in the world nowadays where you've got so much online competition. But like your friend has told you, I think it is so much more important to get your content up to a high quality, because by doing that, you're naturally going to begin boosting your SEO without even trying. So that's why that needs to come first.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a place for SEO somewhere in the world.
Yes.
But it doesn't need to come at the top of the list.
No, that's right. Yeah, that's something much later down the line, which you can then invest in when it's the right time for you, once you've got that library already set up and you're ready to go.
All right. So I've got that one. No SEO right in the beginning. You can do that at a later stage. Yes. What else would you want us to be careful about?
I would also be careful. Oh, that's a very good question. What else do you need to be careful about? I would say be careful about falling into the trap of thinking that it has to be written in a certain way. A lot of people come to me and they say, I want my blogs to sound professional, and I need to sound, a certain way. And I think, okay, yeah, that's absolutely fine. You have your own brand voice and you want to present yourself in a particular way. But remember when we talked about the fact that your blogs allow your audience to get to know you as a person. It's very difficult to do that if you're using a kind of corporate or otherwise professional, and I put that in inverted commas because what does professional mean? How do you sound professional? I'm not sure. But yeah, my opinion is that sounding like yourself is always the most effective thing to do in your blogs, whether that means using a particular turn of phrase, whether it means adding some swear words because that's something your audience really feeds off of, or whether it means avoiding swear words like the plague, keeping away from them because your audience really don't like them. So finding a way of speaking which reflects how you like to converse with your clients, with your friends, with whoever, and trying to emulate that in your blogging style is, for me, the most effective thing to do. And that's the thing that I work really hard on with my clients, because of course, if I'm writing for them, I need to understand those turns of phrase, those little things that make them sound like them. And I always ask them, what is it that makes your content sound like you? What's your communication style? And it always makes people think, oh, what do I sound like? How do I write? And it's really interesting once you start thinking about it and pulling it apart and asking those questions to understand, right, okay, this is you, this is what you sound like. And being able to write in those different voices is one of the great joys of my work, because obviously it's almost a bit like playing dress up. I'm writing in someone else's voice, and it's a lot of fun. So that for me is another thing that's very, very key in blogging, is just be yourself.
I have so much admiration for people who do that, people like yourself who create content for someone else, because it is so hard to be in someone else's head and heart.
Yeah.
and make their content sound like them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I can do that for someone else.
It took a while to get used to, definitely. And the first few clients I worked with, I was a little bit nervous, like, oh God, are they going to like it? Have I, completely got the wrong end of the stick? But thankfully they loved it and it did go very well. So now it's something I really enjoy rather than get nervous about. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, finding those quirks and what makes them tick.
Yeah, that's it, exactly.
So, Katie, tell us, what would you say to somebody who does business in a language which is not their first language? For example, English is my second language, and a lot of people who are not native speakers of the language can feel diffident about using the business language as the key language.
Yeah, I do massively admire people who write content in their second language. So I actually studied German at uni, so I not as well now. I've lost it sadly a little bit, but I do remember in my last few weeks and getting ready for my writing exam. And every day I was in my tutor's office writing out these essays, and she'd be reading them and going, kind of. So huge admiration for anyone who's writing business content in a second language, because it is very, very difficult. And again, I think this is another time when being yourself is hugely, hugely important and also beneficial. It's of course more difficult to pick up on those quirks in another language, because when you're learning a language, you learn that higher level. You almost learn sort of not Queen's English, but English that's very proper. And then when you start chatting with people, as I'm sure you found, you start chatting with people and they use the language entirely differently. That's certainly how I learned German. And then I went to Germany and thought, oh, no one's using these verbs that I've learned, like that. So it's definitely more tricky. But again, it's about being yourself and also just noticing what goes down well and which things resonate and which things maybe don't quite hit the mark as well, and understanding, okay, that turn of phrase or that little line that I've put together there, people are loving that, so I'm going to use that more, whereas that line, it's not quite hitting the mark as well, so I'm just going to phase that out and let's see what else I can do with this line and how I can change that around more to understand what it is that people like about it. And I think conversations like this as well are so helpful, just talking to the people that you're writing for in particular, and understanding from them, what are they looking for, how would they describe what you do or the problem that they have, because there's nothing like using the words straight out of someone's mouth to really be able to speak to that audience. So conversation is another one that's so helpful for you if you are writing in a second or even a third language.
Yeah, you have taken me back to 11 years in time, when I had just moved to the UK, and when I arrived here, I realized that how I was using English, I had been using English, was different from how people used English here.
English is particularly bad for that, isn't it?
Yes. The phrases were different. The prepositions, oh my God, they completely did my head in. Prepositions were really hard. Singular plural was difficult. For example, I was used to saying team, looking at team, organization as one unit. So I would say the team loves to do this. That's singular. But here I realized that it was seen as plural. So the team loved to do that. And I took a while to understand these nuances, but good fun, definitely. Good fun.
English is, when I was teaching English in Germany as part of my course, I found it so hard to explain why we say things a certain way. And of course, the example you've just given, the way you learn it is the grammatically correct way. And I'm hearing it and going, yes, that's the right way. But of course, you're right, everyone uses it more in a plural way. And I remember being in classes with students and them saying, but why can't I say it like that? And I say, I don't know.
Oh, so
that plural, that strange colloquial thing of
are you saying the singular is the right way?
And the way you said you learned it is correct, but for some
Ah,
reason no one uses the correct way, or very few people do. So you're right, when you come over and you're having these more informal chats with people, it's the grammar just goes completely out the window. So yeah, hard language to learn.
I thought I didn't know it right.
No, you had it right. Yeah.
Ah, okay, okay. Oh my God. Yeah, prepositions were so hard for me
Yeah.
because I would be thinking in my native language and we would use preposition in a certain way, but
Yeah.
it was a different way to do it in English. For example, if I'm talking about traveling on train, then in my native language, Hindi, I would say I'm sitting in the train. I'm doing
Yes.
a literal translation here. But in English, we would say boarding the train or sitting, traveling on the train.
Yeah, it's so odd, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
on should really be on top of.
Yeah, that's what it would mean in my
Yeah.
language, that you are not sitting in the coach, but on top of it.
Yeah, I don't know how English has got to this point, and also how it's spoken in so many countries, and yet it just makes no sense. But
Yeah, but there was one thing really interesting that I observed, because now I was living in the world where
yeah,
English was the first language, and that was my quirks and my ways of speaking the language differently didn't really make a difference.
yeah,
It didn't
that's
really
it.
get in my way of communication, because people adapted to how I would speak, I adapted to how they spoke, and it just worked out fine.
Yeah, it's a very quickly evolving language. Is another, I suppose, partly a difficulty, because it is
Mm.
quite hard to really keep track of it, but it is also a bit of a blessing, like you've said, because it just means that new things are being introduced
Yeah.
constantly, and we're always borrowing from other languages and dialects as people kind of join in different conversations. So it's definitely an interesting one in terms of, there's a lot of, you've got a lot of license to play around with the language and find words and phrases that haven't maybe been used in the past, but that people just get, that they just understand it, and then they adopt it as their own. So it's
Yeah.
very fast moving, and a really interesting one for that reason.
Mm. Do you have any fun stories to share with us about any fiascos you might have experienced or participated in?
Oh, in terms of learning language,
Well, in terms of blogging,
blogging,
content,
yes.
saying something that shouldn't have been said.
What have I done? I've definitely made all the mistakes in my content. I've learned from my mistakes. One of the things that I learned very, very quickly was to do with titles. So I had to, obviously, a title is best when it's very clear and very concise. So you can read the title of a blog and you know exactly what it's going to be about and what you're going to get from it. But the mistake that I made at the start was to be a bit more creative with my titles and just try and write titles that sounded cool, but didn't actually tell you anything. And then I would wonder, why is no one reading my blog? And it's because no one knows what this title is about. Badgers. Why have you written a title about badgers when you're talking about blogging?
Yeah.
And it made sense when you knew what I was going to be talking about. But if you didn't already know what the blog was about, the title was just so confusing. And I wrote one about, so a magazine that I used to edit when I worked in publishing was called Gold Magazine. So I wrote a blog called something like My Golden Days of Editing or something, which to me made perfect sense because I was writing about Gold Magazine. But of course, for someone who's never heard of Gold Magazine, it doesn't mean anything. So I'm not going to click on it. So I think that's the main fiasco that I've worked my way through. So anything I tell you about blogging, or when I'm working with my clients, if I advise them about anything, normally I'm advising them to do it because I did the opposite and found out it really doesn't work.
Been there, done it, got the t-shirt.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That again emphasizes what you were saying right in the beginning, isn't it? You have to meet where your client is at.
Oh yeah.
You have
absolutely.
to speak in a language they get.
Yes. And another reason why you definitely shouldn't be paying for expensive SEO when you're starting blogging, because especially for me, if I paid for some SEO on that, it would have been an absolute waste of money. The blog I'd written was not good. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But then that's the only way to improve things, isn't it? You've got to start where you are, do it, make those mistakes, learn, and then do it better all over again.
Yeah, definitely. You certainly can't put off blogging until you know how to write the perfect blog, because
Yeah.
you'll never get started. No one knows how to write the perfect blog. I put my hands up. I can't write you the perfect blog. There's no such thing. It's just about understanding, like you said, what your audience wants, how you like to write and what you enjoy talking about, and then learning from it and constantly improving. So yeah, it's definitely a learning process.
Yeah, yeah. Although I must say, I must put my hand up and say, well, there could be situations wherein you fall into the category of you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, definitely. You don't know what you don't know. And it's always about just finding that out. The more you learn, the more you realize you need to learn, right? So
Yeah. I found out about one of those things a couple of years ago, having lived in the UK for about 9 years.
yeah.
And one of the things that I didn't know was that saying bullshit was actually a swear word. And look at me. I was a trainer, workshop facilitator, running a workshop for about 20 young adults with a global organization in central London about one of those soft skills leadership topics. Can't remember what it was. And at one point, to emphasize what I was saying, I go with all the emphasis, and that's bullshit. And everybody just looked at me and said, and then everybody just started laughing because it flowed really well.
Yeah.
But you see,
sometimes,
I didn't know that was a swear word. I found out about that later when I shared this experience, and people said, oh, people were looking here and there because you just used a swear word in a corporate workshop, which typically doesn't happen. So, okay. Good fun. It's become a story since, because it was a case of I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and a great story as well, because it's funny. So people will remember it.
Yeah, it just turned out really well.
Yeah. Very lucky that it turned out very well.
Yeah. Otherwise, also, I wouldn't have known anyway. Why it bombed. Because I was just telling them, oh no, that's just BS. It wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Oh, this conversation has been so much fun.
Good, isn't it? I'm really enjoying it.
So Katie, tell us, how can people experience some of this goodness with you?
Sure. Well, if you are looking for just a little bit of support and kind of help to DIY your blog, my free Facebook group is definitely the place to go. That's called Blog Magic, Blogging Hints and Tips for Coaches, Consultants and Counsellors. And in there, I've got all sorts of different things. I have Wednesday Wisdom, which is a training every Wednesday. And that might be a little picture in a post, or it might be a live like this one, to just teach you about different things to do with blogging that will help you sort of strategic wise and also tech wise as well, because there's a certain amount of tech that you need to get your head around for blogging. So for a little bit of free inspiration and support, my free Facebook group is definitely the place to start. And if you are looking for more help, if you are looking to outsource your blog and actually work with someone and partner with someone to get that written, my main service is the Retainer, which is a monthly blog which you can work with me on. And like I've talked about here, you would send me an outline of your blog each month as a voice note, or you could even send me an email or some social content that you've posted that you'd like turned into a blog. And then I do that for you. So I write your blog for you, having got to know your brand voice. I optimize it for you so that your ideal clients can search for it on Google. And I also upload it to your website for you. So you haven't got to take care of anything. All you need to do is send me your outline and then it's done. So if anyone is interested, I do have some spaces available to start in August on that service. So please do feel free to reach out if that's of interest.
Wonderful, wonderful. Oh, so what I'm picking up there is, because it's a retainer model, one blog a month. Is that the frequency you recommend to business owners?
The frequency is kind of a personal choice. I definitely recommend at least once a month. The more the more frequent, the better. But of course, you don't want to be writing, you want your blogs to be of value. So even if you're only writing, a blog every 6 months, if that blog is really high value and you're getting everything in there that your audience wants to read about, then that's perfect. Just that consistency is important. But for the service I offer, a monthly is sort of the minimum that I offer on the service, at least.
Oh, you just made me feel so much better. 6 months frequency.
Yeah, it's all about what works for you. There's no point saying you must blog every month. If it's something that doesn't fit into your schedule and the way that you like to work, you've got to roll with your energy and where it's at the time. So even if it's only once every 6 months, as long as that blog's consistent and it's very high value, it's going to be doing great things for you and for your audience. But yeah, a monthly blog is fantastic because it means it's very consistent, and that's something else that the service helps with. Of course, it's that accountability and that it's all taken care of for you. So all you've got to do is send me 10-minute voice note once a month and it's taken care of. So it's much easier that way if it's something that you want to be doing that frequently. But certainly if you're DIYing it, provided you're consistent, there's no need necessarily to do it every month if that's a bit too much.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I definitely need to do more blogging than I do at the moment. Well, talking about tech, I have a question for you, Katie.
Yeah.
Would you say that it's a good idea to put the same blog, say, on LinkedIn as well as on your website?
This is a question I get quite often as well. It is one that is quite confusing. And of course, as a lot of people know, LinkedIn isn't very keen on you linking to external websites, which does make it quite hard to share your blog on LinkedIn. What I do on LinkedIn is every now and again, if I've got a blog that's particularly performing well, I'll create an article on LinkedIn and I'll copy and paste that blog, but I'll probably just leave off a paragraph or two maybe.
Yeah.
And just at the bottom, I'll say, this is an excerpt from a blog on my website. Please check out, www. And give the link. And what you're doing through that is you're still sharing your blogs with your LinkedIn connections, because LinkedIn is much happier to share an article on their platform. But you're also giving them that kind of chance to then find out more from you. I'm saying there's a lot more of this on my website. So your website needs to be the primary source for all of your blogs, and you certainly don't want to duplicate your blogs on other websites, because that's not a good idea for kind of your SEO will drop if that's something that you are doing, potentially. But by having almost like an excerpt as an article on LinkedIn, you can almost bypass that problem, still get eyes on your content without breaking any rules in terms of duplicating content or linking out from LinkedIn, because we know they do push your post down a little bit if you do that. So that's my little workaround that I use now and again.
Okay, so it's okay to take an excerpt and put it on social media, but not put the entire article, put the entire blog.
That's right. Yeah, that's usually the best way to do it, just a little excerpt of it. Got it.
And you are on Facebook as well as LinkedIn?
Yes, that's right. So I obviously I have my group, and I also have my business page on Facebook. I do check in on LinkedIn now and again. It's not my main platform, so I'm a bit quiet on LinkedIn, but I am still on there now and again. So if you prefer using LinkedIn and you would like to connect, then please do feel free to connect with me on there as well.
Wonderful. When we finish this conversation, will you kindly leave all your links just underneath this video so that we have everything in one place?
Of course, yeah, no problem at all.
All right. Katie, before we let you go, what is one big message you want to share with our audience today?
I think the message that I would love to share is just how powerful blogging can be, particularly for coaches who are working one-to-one with your clients over a long period of time. Blogging isn't just one of those, nice to have in your business. If you're a coach working with clients in that way, blogging is absolutely one of the most powerful things you can do to build rapport with your audience and really take those strangers through to clients in a way that's really low pressure, one that allows them to get to know you as quickly or as slowly as they choose. And it only requires a one-time investment from you in terms of actually writing those blogs. So definitely, if it's not something you're already doing, certainly consider it. It's not for everyone. For some, they might prefer a podcast or a video, but blogging, if you do enjoy writing and sharing content in that way, so powerful. So please do think about that.
Wonderful. Yes, definitely worth exploring. Definitely.
Yes.
Katie, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom with us. It's been a delightful conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it.